Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, sign up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group and get the inside scoop on all things BYU by joining the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's a 14-day free trial for you guys to see if it's the right option for you guys, and just $5 a month to be a part of it. The best part about it is it's the updates coming to you in the form of a text message directly to your phone. It can't get much more direct than that, but I would hope you guys would consider joining us today. We got a really, really good crew right now and looking always for more Cougar fans to join us on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, we talked last year often about this, and it's been a fairly well-chronicled story that Pro Football Focus, PFF for short form, put out a ranking of the top quarterbacks in the Big 12 Conference last year going into the 2024 football season. Clear at the bottom, number 16 out of 16 was Jake Retzlaff from BYU, and he screenshotted it. He used it as motivation time and time again. I think it was Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus who made amends by apologizing to Jake Retzlaff on a podcast. He proved once again that, yeah, he was far from the bottom quarterback, the worst quarterback in the Big 12 Conference last season. Well, did CBS Sports deliver that same type of motivation this season for BYU that they hopefully can tap into? Well, at least on the surface, it sure looks that way, because if you look at it, college football from CBS Sports has a top ranking of the 150 best players in college football. Well, if you go down the list, you're scrolling. Hey, there at number 99 is Jake Retzlaff. Now, that's not bad, obviously, because you'll take that. He's inside the top 100. That's obviously a nice mark of accomplishment for him. He said this of Jake Retzlaff: sparked BYU's late season surge in the Alamo Bowl win over Colorado. Finished with 2,800 passing yards, actually more than that, was nearly 3,000, 20 TDs, 388 rushing yards, and 6 more scores. Clutch, confident dual threat who stepped up in big moments. Not flashy, but reliable and versatile. Okay, not bad. I appreciate him saying that. But here is where the motivation, I think, at least in my mind, should kick in for Jake Retzlaff, because if you look a little higher up on that list, at number 62, a full 37 spots higher than Jake Retzlaff, Devon Dampier from the University of Utah. Yes, a transfer quarterback who has never taken a snap at the Power 4 level is, in fact, many spots higher than Jake Retzlaff. They say this about Devon Dampier: electric dual threat and Big 12 newcomer to watch. Threw for 2,750 plus yards and rushed for 1,150 plus with 31 total touchdowns as a sophomore. An underrated passer with good touch and and average arm strength. Dangerous as a runner in Utah's new ground heavy scheme. His OC Jason Beck came with him, unquote. All right. This is going to devolve into a BYU versus Utah thing, so let's just get it out of the way right now. How in the world does a guy who has proven himself at the Power 4 level, led a program to an 11-2 record, suddenly be considered a full 36 spots worse than a guy who was a very, very good player at New Mexico, but does not have any snaps or proven capability at the Power 4 level? Yes, I understand that Utah fans are excited about Devon Dampier. And in fact, I think Devon Dampier is a very, very capable quarterback. What I watched of him at New Mexico last year made me think, okay, this kid, he's really, really good. And what could he be at the next level? Well, we're going to find out. But really? We're going to rank him, like I said, 37 spots higher than Jake Retzlaff simply because he's coming to Utah? That's what this screams of. And Jake Retzlaff, he absolutely should print this off, screenshot it, whatever he needs to do, and use it as bulletin board material. There are a lot of guys out there in the college football universe who obviously are trying to find the best way to motivate themselves to go out and prove themselves at a very high level. And Jake Retzlaff has proven time and time again that he will use whatever it takes to get himself to accomplish what he hopes to accomplish in college football. Take this, bottle it up, and unleash it on college football this year. Aaron Roderick has been very clear in what he expects of Jake Retzlaff this year. 70% completion percentage. He wants to see 30-plus touchdowns passing against single-digit interceptions. He wants to see a marked increase on Jake Retzlaff's stats from last year. He was 57%, just a shade under 58% as a passer last year. He was 20 versus 12 in terms of touchdowns to interceptions. It's going to be a pretty marked increase if he can accomplish the benchmarks that Aaron Roderick wants him to accomplish. If he does that, I would imagine he's probably outplayed a guy like Devon Dampier. And like I said, I really like Devon Dampier as a player, but what did he really accomplish last year at New Mexico? A 5-7 season? Yes, that's it. What he accomplished. Utah went 5-7 a year ago, but what this screams of to me is that once again, BYU, even though they did what they did last year and had some people remember after BYU absolutely demolished Colorado, who is going to retire the jerseys of Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders this week already. Hey, you do your thing, Colorado. But beside the point, after BYU absolutely demolished the Buffaloes, there are people saying that BYU should have been in the college football playoff last year. Jake Retzlaff had them on the doorstep of that. And I already know some of you are going to jump in the mention saying, well, they did it in spite of Jake Retzlaff, Jake. Great. Think of what you want. I don't care. The fact of the matter is, Jake Retzlaff had BYU it feels like a couple of plays away from the Big 12 title game and in theory a chance to go to the college football playoff. That's not good enough for CBS Sports to consider him higher on this list. Great. Go for it. If I'm Jake, I take that, I bottle it up, and I say, all right, guess what? I don't remember what's the reporter's name who wrote this. I know it wasn't a name that I recognized from the Blake Brockermeyer from CBS Sports who wrote this. Great. I hope that Blake Brockermeyer is doing a podcast later this year, apologizing to Jake Retzlaff for ranking him 99th on his list of top 150 players. I'm not saying that Jake Retzlaff is going to be a top 5 player in college football, because if he does, in fact, become that, yes, he already talked about the fact he wants to win the Heisman Trophy. That would probably get him to the Heisman ceremony in New York. But I just don't think that ranking a guy who's a transfer from the G5 level to P5 level and saying he's 37 spots or 37 players better than a guy like Jake Retzlaff, it doesn't square up with me. It may be my homerific take looking at that, but I just don't agree with that ranking. And I hope that, like I said, Jake Retzlaff takes that to heart, prints it out, screenshots it, puts it wherever he needs to motivate him to go out there and once again, prove the naysayers wrong. Because the other thing about this is BYU didn't have a single other player in the top 150, not an Isaiah Glasker, not a Jack Kelly. There are a handful of guys on BYU's roster that I would argue should be in the top 150 players of college football. But once again, it screams to me that there's a lot of people out there, Mr. Brockermeyer among them, who still consider BYU that cute little team from Provo, Utah. That okay, can they really replicate what they did last year? They broke through, but do they have staying power? I think BYU does have staying power, and in fact, they got the vast majority of their production back from last year's team that went 11-2. Okay, as a team, take everything that has been written here about Jake Retzlaff, translate that to yourselves, and be just upset that once again BYU is being overlooked. And we saw how far BYU rode that motivation of being weekly. It felt like underrated. Remember, they were an underdog to a sub 500 UCF team on the road, even though they were undefeated. Man, that's a mark of disrespect. And I think this is, once again, another mark that BYU can use to rally around. Even if it's Jake Retzlaff in this circumstance, I think the entire BYU football program can rally around this and say, hey, let's go out and prove them wrong once again. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Locked On Cougars. Had a little bit of a blip there in the final segment, so hopefully it came through loud and clear. I'll be obviously checking it on the back end. But as always, thank you for all of your support of the podcast. Cannot thank you guys enough for continuing to subscribe, rate, review, share it with your family and friends. If you're out there on cruising with the Cougs and you're hanging out with fellow Cougar fans, tell them about this. If you haven't found Mama and Papa Hatch yet, a couple of you have, please continue to send me the pictures of it. It's pretty cool to see them out in the wild, as it were, hanging out in Mexico. But once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.